All right. Welcome back, everyone. We've had a ton of requests to really dig into Chidimma Adetshina's Miss Universe journey and how it all plays into this rivalry between Nigeria and South Africa. I mean, we've got articles stacked up here, and it gets pretty wild. We're talking about switching countries, citizenship controversies, online feuds about who's really the top dog in Africa.
Yeah, it's more than just a beauty pageant, that's for sure. You really see how much this Giant of Africa title means to both countries and how that plays out not just in politics and stuff, but like in music, sports, everything.
Yeah, like this constant battle to be number one, right? But before we get into all that, let's start with Chidimma Adetshina herself. What a story.
Right, it all starts with Miss South Africa. She's in the competition, seems like she's got a real shot. Then, bam, she drops out.
What happened?
There are these allegations against her mom, something about identity theft.
Whoa, that's intense. I can't imagine dealing with that kind of pressure. And then on top of that, she gets all this online hate.
Exactly. People questioning if she was even South African because of her Nigerian heritage really makes you think about how complicated identity can be, especially these days.
Yeah, absolutely. But the crazy thing is, she doesn't let it break her.
No.
She gets invited to compete for Miss Universe Nigeria, and guess what? She wins.
Not only that, she goes on to become the first runner-up in Miss Universe. And she's crowned Miss Universe Africa and Oceania, too. Talk about a comeback.
I know, right? From all that negativity to this incredible achievement. And her Instagram post after winning Miss Universe, it really stood out to me. She thanks both Nigeria and Africa for their support. You know, it felt very intentional.
Oh, for sure. It's like she's rising above the whole rivalry thing, thanking Nigeria for embracing her, but also acknowledging all of Africa. Grace under pressure, I'd say.
Definitely. But you can't ignore how her win was seen as a win for Nigeria over South Africa, especially online.
Right, like Renu Odwalla, the human rights activist, she put this post on X. It was pretty pointed, talking about how some South Africans rejected Adetshina and now she's representing the whole continent.
Yeah, I saw that. It's like, whoa, ironic much. It actually reminds me of when that South African singer Tyla won the Grammy for Best African Music Performance for her song Water. Some Nigerians saw it as a loss, you know, like their country had lost out.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely fueled the whole who's better debate, musically speaking.
And then, to add fuel to the fire, Nigeria beats South Africa in the Africa Cup of Nations, the football tournament. And suddenly, all over social media, Nigerians are claiming Amapiano as their own.
Our piano, they were calling it.
It's funny, but also makes you think, right? This need to own things after a win. Like, is it just playful rivalry, or is it something deeper, like a power move?
Interesting question. It's like, on one hand, it's just fans having fun, bonding over a win. But then there's that line, you know, between friendly competition and disrespect.
Absolutely. Where's the line between banter and being insensitive? Something to think about for sure, especially with this rivalry. But we can't forget the serious side of all this, too.
You mean the xenophobic attacks in Johannesburg back in 2019?
Exactly. Those attacks were a scary reminder that this rivalry can have real-world consequences. I mean, they targeted businesses owned by foreigners, a lot of them Nigerian.
Yeah, it's a dark chapter. And it shows how deep these tensions run.
For sure. It's like a wake-up call that even something that seems harmless can turn ugly fast.
Yeah.
Speaking of consequences, remember how we were talking about Chidimma Adetshina maybe not being able to go back to South Africa?
Yeah, her birth country.
Turns out her and her mom's South African identity documents, they've been canceled. So now the question is, where does she belong?
It's a tough one, right? It really makes you think about what belonging even means. Is it where you're born, where you have papers, or something else entirely? It's like what ties you to a place, you know?
Well, I mean, Nigeria's been so supportive. They gave her a chance when maybe others wouldn't have. And look at what she's accomplished representing them. There's definitely this shared pride there.
Yeah, you can see that. But South Africa's still her home, right? Where she grew up. To have that connection cut off, especially over something like this, that's got to be hard.
It's almost like a reminder that these rivalries, these games countries play, they can have real consequences for people.
It really makes you think about what we assume about identity and belonging. Like, what makes someone belong somewhere?
Right. Is it just paperwork
Yeah.
or culture? Or is it more about feeling connected, feeling like you're part of something?
Especially now when everyone's moving around, mixing cultures, it's not so simple anymore.
In Adetshina's story, it really throws all that into the spotlight.
It shows how messy it can be.
And it ties back into that Giant of Africa idea. Whether it's Nigeria or South Africa, that title, it carries a lot of weight.
For sure. It affects how people see those countries, but also how people from those countries see themselves. And maybe the real point is that Africa's strength isn't about one country being better, it's about all of them working together. Imagine what they could achieve if they teamed up.
That's a really good point. A unified giant of Africa instead of a divided one.
Yeah.
But for Chidimma, what happens now? Does she stay in Nigeria where she's found all this support?
Or does she try to go back to South Africa, even with all the challenges that might come with that?
She's been through so much, but she's handled it all with so much strength and grace.
No matter what she decides, her story is going to keep people talking about identity, about belonging, about what it really means to represent a country.
It's so much bigger than just a beauty pageant, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a story about being human in a world that's constantly changing.
This whole deep dive has been a wild ride. Started with a beauty queen,
Hmm.
and we ended up talking about all this deep stuff about who we are, where we belong. Makes you wonder what you think about all this. How do we define identity in a world where borders are blurring?
It's not an easy question. And Chidimma's story, it shows us that it's okay to embrace the complexity of it all.
Yeah, we've just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to explore.
The history behind this rivalry, what's going to happen with Amapiano music, and what it means to be African in a world that's becoming more and more globalized.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But that's what we love about these deep dives, right? Keep asking questions. Keep digging for those hidden stories. You never know what you might find.
It's like those discoveries kind of force you to rethink what you thought you knew, and you end up understanding yourself and the world a little bit better.
Yeah, this one really took us on a journey. Started with a beauty pageant, and now we're talking about national identity and these rivalries and how all that actually affects people's lives. It's pretty deep.
It goes beyond just Nigeria and South Africa, right? It's like this global thing with everyone moving around, cultures blending. It makes you wonder, what does it even mean to be the giant of Africa now?
Right. Can any one country really claim that title?
Mhm.
Or is it more about changing how we think about it, working together instead of against each other?
Maybe it's about realizing that the whole continent is connected, celebrating all the different people and cultures, and understanding that being unified, that's where the real strength is.
That makes a lot of sense. And it makes me think about what happens next, after all this. Chidimma's case, with her citizenship and all that, could that change how African countries deal with these situations in the future?
It's definitely possible. It raises a lot of questions about how we define belonging, questions that governments and lawyers are probably going to be debating for a while.
So we started this deep dive looking at Chidimma Adetshina's story and the rivalry between Nigeria and South Africa. And it turned out to be about so much more than what we saw on the surface.
It's like a reminder that there's always more to the story.
Exactly. And for everyone listening, I hope you're walking away with a sense of, there's always something to learn, always another layer to uncover.
Keep asking questions, keep digging deeper.
That's what makes these deep dives so interesting. You never know what you're going to find. So until next time, happy digging, everyone.